So, hi everyone. Welcome to Malevolent Autopsy. If you're new here, welcome. This is a show hosted by patrons featuring patron content as Malevolent is in its 5th season, updating live. The show is chock full of spoilers since every episode is meant to comment on a live update. So if you want to avoid spoilers for all of Malevolent as it's been released to chapter 225, check out now and come back next time. Our episodes are recorded live so you can always listen later. I'm Queen, my pronouns are she, her, and tonight I am controlling Arthur's funny bone because I am in a super giggly mood and I think I would enjoy controlling Arthur's funny bone. He would laugh a lot more if I was in charge.
Cool beans. My name is PinchofPeppers. My pronouns are she, her, and I haven't even thought of this. I control Arthur's left ear, the one that's really fucked up.
You only have to worry about like most of an ear.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the level of responsibility.
All right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and give today's summary. The chapter opens with Arthur's decision, truth, as it was decided by a wide margin in the vote last week. Malum says the children of the forest see Arthur but don't know about most of the things he is hoping to learn, but they know what pursues him, and so does Malum. He tells Arthur that Mother Darkness is following him and explains that she has many faces and has taken on many names, such as the Witch, the Shroud, and the Dimming Light. She has been around since life first appeared in the world. She seeks out children before their death and creates disciples of them, infecting them and raising them as their own, giving them powers while she wears one of her guises. They then share a greater consciousness, and they can transmit what they see and hear to her. Malum confirms that she has a physical form connected through these children she creates, and that she feeds on the flesh of the living. She cannot be killed by normal weapons, and she has a true form of some kind. Although Arthur pleads for more information, Malum begins to leave. Alexander screeches in the distance. Malum only stops to warn Arthur to be careful of him. He is not what he seems before leaving. John and Arthur assume he means Yorick, and the boys decide to sleep for the night. John requests a little more time to watch the firelight die, and Arthur tells John the name of his first real friend was William.
Very cool.
What did you think, Peppers?
I enjoyed it. I mean, we got some additional information about, this upcoming, who I feel to be an upcoming villain. There are some growing speculations as to who this character is, which I know Fish and Lambda will come on here to embellish more later on in the podcast episode. But currently, I like to just cruise on. I don't really. I'm keeping my eyes open and my ears open, and there is a very small part of me. I do think that having knowledge is just at this point maybe a bit more useful. But I do also wish that we had gotten like a really cool invisibility cloak or something. I don't know, like a bag of holding, something.
I mean, the grass is always greener. I think everyone would always be wondering, like, what would we have gotten, right?
Yeah, I also see that people believe that Malum is not referring to York, but rather referring to John or referring to the owl, Alexander, as the one to not be trusted. Me currently, there's a part of me where there's like a 50-50 in me. There's a 50% of me that's like, oh, well, what the story is doing right now is doing I forgot the term, but where they dangle something that's not actually correct in front of you, something that you might think would be the obvious
Like a
answer
red
of
herring.
yeah of he, and then the characters go, oh, he's talking about Yorick, and then of course I'm sure Malum, while he's like skulking in the background, he's like, isn't these fucking idiots, I was talking about the owl. Or I'm just thinking too heavily into it and is genuinely talking about Yorick. I think it's very clear and obvious that Yorick isn't what he seems. The way that I've always seen it was it's a 50-50. It's it's a 50-50 of it's either a red herring of you know, both Yorick or I'm sorry, both John and Arthur stare at each other and are like, oh yeah, it's definitely Yorick, and then Malum in the background's like, no, it's the owl. Or it's something very obvious where it's actually Yorick and I'm just looking too deep into it. Or at the same time, I I kind of think he's talking about the owl. I just don't see it as Malum talking about John because I mean I suppose it's a potential it could be John because John hasn't fully embellished on what he
Right.
did in the dark world, and maybe he did something especially fucked up that he's not willing to share.
Well, that
Um
honestly was one of the things that. So my initial reaction was like, John is treating Yorick like Oscar right now. John is being petty and jealous and moody about Yorick, and I understand that there is a better reason now, and it's not for no reason. Because yes, they need to be really wary of Yorick or of Yorick, and the fact that like John has been wary of the Vanguard this whole time, and blah blah blah. But the immediate conclusion to jump to is that it was Yorick was a big one for me. I really did not feel like it was Yorick. And my first instinct was, it's the fucking owl. But I also have like a vendetta against the owl from a vote that we made earlier, which I will not be getting into. So I promised myself I wouldn't go there on this episode. So I think there is a potential that it could be John, because what would be crazier than Malum being able to see something clinging to Arthur slash John right now that they are not aware is visible, or that Malum is the only person who can really see that kind of a change or supernatural aura. I'm thinking of the fact that like, John could see darkness clinging to Marie's house in very different ways. And I think it would be so interesting if Malum was seeing John it in a different way than we anticipate. And maybe it's not even all bad. Maybe it's just like Malum is seeing John grow beyond what he was, and John is something quote unquote entirely new, entirely his own. Like Malum being a some kind of a spirit or a guide of some sort, is clearly able to be in touch with things that Arthur and John aren't. And I think it would be super cool if Malum was actually referring to John just kind of being a fucking weirdo now, because he's not the king in yellow and he's not a human. So what the hell is this? And probably has never seen anything like it before, because John is his own. So I think that would be cool. I do kind of also think it's the owls, though. I mean, I think the timing of the screeching noise, it just lined up too well. But I wanted to at least throw out the possibility that it's John. I think that's not completely out of pocket for Malevolent.
Yeah, I think a reason why I'm leaning more on the owl is that John has or Arthur has been especially maybe fond of the owl, of this creature. I understand it's an owl. Like if you are
Yeah,
just a normal lad and you know enter a location where nothing is familiar to you, you hear an owl, you think, oh, it's an owl. Like there's nothing to suggest that it's anything worse than just, you know, an owl. But because the fact that Arthur has been so trusting of it, that's kind of the main reason why when I hear Malum say, don't trust him, I'm thinking, well, what's the one thing that Arthur has been trusting the whole time? Well, the owl.
right.
Um, why is the owl following them? Normal owls don't do that. I do kind of am leaning more and more into the theory that there is something nefarious about the owl. I am still enjoying the owl while it's there. But I definitely, it is not a far throw for me to believe the idea that this owl is a spy for Lilith or for Mother Darkness
So many owl
or
theories.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
the chat, we have Benjamin Frog Crow saying, "Yeah, we had the John is hiding shit last season. Doesn't feel right for it to be him." Fish also says, "On a meta level, there's no sense for us to be particularly suspicious of him right now. He's being the most open and honest he's ever been here. It doesn't make sense for a new plotline of him being actually suspicious, even though Malum may have very good reason in character to be suspicious of John if he knew he was there. But meta-wise, it doesn't shake out to me." And I understand that, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be something that Malum is like. I don't know that it was necessarily something Malum was like, that whatever I'm talking about is clearly dangerous and going to kill you. He said, "Be careful, he's not what he seems," which to me is such a vague thing. Like, you could say that about fucking poison ivy, and it's not that much of a threat to you, but it would be kind of annoying, you know. I mean, I just think that there is some flexibility for me in the way that I've read Malevolent and its twists and turns, and that it could totally be something that is innocuous to us, but something that other people, other creatures, other entities might think is weird. Like, if they run into a bunch of supernatural stuff this season and all of them comment on John being a fucking weirdo, like, to me that wouldn't indicate suspicion. That would indicate John changing in some way. John going through a metamorphosis and being able to outwardly project that in some way, and being able for other people, because the journey of identity is like, you find it, which we've already gone through with John. You embrace it, which we just went through, and then he declared it. So now people are going to have to recognize and acknowledge it, which kind of is the last, I mean, one of the final steps on the journey of identity is, now that you've fully embraced who you are ready to announce it to the world. And now you have to deal with how the world is going to react to you announcing your identity and the changes that come with that. And we already saw that encounter with the hag, where people are going to be hostile about it, try to change your mind about it, you know, not want to accept you. And how you manage that challenge, that can be, you know, an aspect of that part of your journey of identity. But then you have people who like have never heard of that before, or just don't know what you're talking about. You have people who, like Arthur, fully embrace it, excited for you, happy for you, supporters on your journey. So it does stand to reason that I do think Malum could be kind of a placeholder for people who just don't know how to feel about you yet. And you have to be, you are like, in this case, you could also be kind of an example. You could be a person who is introducing this concept to somebody for the first time. You could be their first encounter with, you know, a person of color, or a trans person. Like, this could be the first time that somebody is seeing that, and you have to know how you feel about being that person, and how, you know, if it's uncomfortable for you, or if it's an educational opportunity for you, things like that. So I don't know, I could see it working to still be
Yeah.
John. Now, do I really, like, if I had to vote on which option I think is more likely, the owl, but I like entertaining the idea that it could be John. I think it's still pretty possible to me.
Yeah, that's a fair idea.
Yes, hello, Graham. Welcome. Graham has been here for every autopsy episode, and streak is unbroken. Graham made it. Welcome, Graham. So, the other thing that I found particularly fun about this chapter was how Malum specifically was saying that the Mother Darkness is a manipulative entity that seeks out children before they're dead, or, you know, at a probably a more vulnerable time in their life. What the actual transcript I think says, like, before their demise, which I assume is before they've died. And then she offers them, or gives them, some kind of power or ability that makes them extremely strong and connects them to a consciousness. And it's this whole, like, kind of a hive mind thing, but it does put into perspective why the witch's story is the way it is. That, like,
Hmm.
being abandoned and being in a vulnerable position where you are left, you know, to survive on your own, and then someone manipulative coming in and at the last second kind of picking you up. And I think that's how a lot of people get into those really terrible situations where they are put into an abusive or otherwise unhealthy situation where they are not able to get out because they were rescued. And this person is, you know, the person that gave them whatever they needed to survive. And as a human in a dire need, you can become bonded to that. And I think the witch is a great example of how, yeah, that, you know, the witch was a victim, but that doesn't excuse what the witch has done. That doesn't justify anything.
Yeah, it's almost the idea of the cycle of abuse. I don't want to suggest that, Mother Darkness, well, in some ways, Mother Darkness took advantage of her, but the cycle of abuse of, her being a victim and then eventually slowly becoming yet another kind of abuser in that way of, she didn't have to fucking shank Arthur, like she could have just been like, "Can I have
Yeah.
my shit back?"
Yeah.
Like, like a normal person, but because she's fucking insane and has maggots all over her, she's like, I'm gonna kill this guy, and then I'm gonna tear him open and put my children in him. And you're like, dear God, just if you just wanted it back, well, we wouldn't have given it.
Yeah.
But
Vol Control says, cool motive, still murder. I was actually thinking that as I was talking, and I was like, this is a serious subject. I shouldn't make a joke, but it's autopsy. Yeah, I'm going to make a joke.
yeah, yeah. Well, if you don't want to make the joke, I'm right here.
Benjamin Frogcrow says the witch was wrong, but I do have sympathy for her. Panwitch says, I had a thought about the witch and Mother Darkness that it reminded me of the lighthouse in season 1. After Arthur kills the cultist woman, John asks if she really deserved it because she was a victim as well. That's a great parallel that I completely forgot about, but I love that. And yes, by the way, happy birthday, Graham. Oh my gosh. And happy birthday to Abriel, who is a mod in the server and usually pretty active here and sometimes helps out with chat moderation and autopsy and stuff. So happy birthday to both of you.
Yeah, big birthday blast. Graham, I love that the witch has that depth and is still a shitty person. All of the worst people still come from somewhere. I feel that Malevolent does really well in showing at least there is kind of some dynamic to each of these characters, even if they're kind of a one-note character. You can see you can have sympathy for them. I'd say Larson's the only one where I could say he can eat shit and die. But all the other ones, thinking of Kellen, for example, Kellen clearly born with perhaps some mental instability,
Right.
which was only exacerbated with his experience with the King in Yellow. We have, the hag who was clearly had a horrific childhood. Her mother was tortured. A horrible, horrible situation. You could even argue Yellow, for example. Maybe not necessarily the King in Yellow, but definitely Yellow as that dynamic of, well, Yellow doesn't know any better. And this is him having some insight into humanity, and Yellow is what John was, but Arthur, his trauma absolutely fucking ruining any camaraderie between the two of them because Arthur keeps lashing out and it's this constant circle. But I find that even characters barely mentioned, Anna Stanzik, Emily McFarlane, all these different characters that you barely know about, like
Yeah.
the lighthouse girlie. I forgot her name.
Lighthouse
Um,
girly.
the lighthouse girlie. You only see for a very limited amount of time, but you can immediately sympathize or empathize with whatever they had gone through, and you understand the trauma that led them to their demise, or with their wherever they are right now. And once again, except Larson, he can eat shit and die.
Yeah, I want to say too that Malevolent is excellent at being really transparent about the fact that, like, yes, everyone is capable of change and being good and all of that stuff. But in these backstories where these awful people still come from somewhere, it also shows you that, like, yeah, at any time, people can also do terrible things, despite the fact that, they had a fine childhood, or, maybe they didn't and they were fine, and then all of a sudden, they changed. And I do think that in Malevolent, you're also dealing with that Lovecraftian element, even though, fuck love, fuck Lovecraft, but you're dealing with that element of madness, capital M, and I definitely think that Kellen was supposed to portray more of that like supernatural madness rather than portraying like a real mental health issue. It's just hard because those things can sometimes be portrayed where they overlap.
Hmm.
And I do know that as somebody who has done a lot of reading about, mental health and all of that stuff, I'm not an expert whatsoever, but I will say that just because you can sympathize or empathize with somebody's struggle, or they have a compelling argument or backstory or reason behind whatever they're doing, it's always worth it to question, like, where does this come from? Because I don't think Kellen was, like, I wouldn't call Kellen a villain. He was an
I don't know.
antagonist in Malevolent. I wouldn't say he was a villain. He was afflicted with madness, and he had to act on that because that's by nature what madness does. And I think that is really well done in Malevolent, but it is also extremely hard to convey in an audio medium. I also want to mention a comment here that got pinged out. Lambda says, God, Fish and I were talking the other week about what it was about Kellen that attracted the king, who is interested in artists, and we were talking about how it was probably Kellen's singing. He was once a normal person, and that's awful what happened to him.
Yeah. And then additionally, Graham mentions Harlan once said something he keeps in mind while writing is that any character is capable of anything if pushed to it. And that's some advice that really stuck with me. I think it's a fantastic piece of advice and explains a lot of the depth achieved in Malevolent. And
Ugh.
I actually want to bring that back up regarding on Tumblr. There was a perfect, absolutely perfect response regarding what the hag said to John, that he somehow showed his true colors when he was in
Oh
the
my
dark
God, I
world.
know
Just,
exactly what you're talking about, and I
oh my
was going to
gosh.
bring that up too. I'm so glad. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, it was such a load of crap because when you're put in those horrific situations, you are pushed to those situations. Those are not normal circumstances. You are required to do what you think in under duress, how you should respond, how you should react. And so I genuinely believe that John was fighting for his own survival, for his own sanity. I'm not suggesting that it was okay, but absolutely, of course, I find it ridiculous. I find the hag's logic completely ridiculous. And so when people say, she has a point, no, no, absolutely not. The way that John responded in the dark world was an act solely of survival, and you can absolutely say the same thing about Arthur in the pits with Faust. I absolutely don't think it was his true nature to cannibalize a guy, to kill and cannibalize a guy. But it's been however long, a good, by the time he finally kills Faust, it was probably like 2 months of straight torture. Plus all of the prior shit that he's had to deal with, that constant buildup that eventually he's pushed to, act on that. So I find it a little, I find the hag's logic. Understand that the hag absolutely believes what she believes, but she is categorically incorrect in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is also something that I enjoy a lot in when I play D&D, because I love D&D. Now, let me rephrase that. I love using D&D as a vehicle for writing and character exploration and role play. I am not by any means good at D&D. I could not tell you right now, which are the hit dice, but that idea of black and white is so difficult to stick to when you are playing a real person. Like when you are playing a traditionally like a human being, that's used more in placeholder terms, but somebody who has a full spectrum of the human condition and the moral back and forth that we all go through. And I think there is a nuance to everybody's rationale and decision making, but ultimately it comes down to the fact that everybody can be pushed to do terrible things. That is something that we are hardwired to be capable of based on our ability to survive. That is the adaptability that is human nature. And that is part of what we enjoy exploring in fiction because it's a safe way to explore that. And Malevolent ultimately is some of the best ways to explore what happens when you are forced to survive. And really that's a lot of horror, is just what will you do and how bad can it get and what is the breaking point for any one person. And everybody handles that differently. So I don't think at all that Arthur eating a person shows what kind of man he is. I think Arthur's decisions in his life, not under extreme duress, are far more representative of his character, and we just don't know him before that. We don't know Arthur without stress in his life. So,
Yeah, it is absolutely a part of them, but it is a defense mechanism in most cases. Doesn't mean that they're not capable. I mean, Arthur did enjoy killing Faust in the same way that
right,
John lavished in exerting his control in the dark world.
right.
Kind of that dark sense. And I want to be very careful and sensitive when I do link this to, real world and reality. I have a friend who works in more of the court side of things with a bunch of people who have done horrific things and other people who have, just really bad luck or not on the great side of things. And something that has constantly struck me is my friend has told me how normal everyone seems, how friendly, and how they're just normal people, and it's such a shock to them. I think, when you view these morally quote unquote reprehensible characters in a story, and even these morally reprehensible people in real life, understand that everyone, I have always believed that everyone is capable of that, and it's your responsibility to check yourself, and responsibility for your friends to check them, so on and so forth. And so within Malevolent, Arthur and John have each other to check each other to make sure that they don't go down that route. Because I firmly believe that if John wasn't there, Arthur would have been lost in the sauce
Yeah, I
by
get you.
by part 6. And that's where I think Darther would have been born from. But you have a different idea of what Darther
Oh
would
my God. Okay. That is off server drama that we are not going to get into right now, Peppers. um, I'm going to read out these two comments from Liz because I love reading Liz's contributions. And despite all evidence to the contrary, I do not hate Liz. I think Liz is wonderful. There is nothing wrong with Liz. Anyway, in the deeper archives of Invictus, when they were doing character creation for Call of Cthulhu 2, one of the things that Harlan advocated for to make interesting characters is having every character have a dark secret that would really mess with them if it was revealed. Bird said, that's one of my favorite character creating methods, and Liz responded, I think that methodology explains a lot about how all the characters we meet and learn about seem to have dark secrets or tragic, awful things in their past. Totally agree. I think that is a great place to transition into where my dark times have fallen. This is a no vote week, my friends. It's been hard out here not having anything to argue about and being deprived of natural, healthy content to yell at people about, but I've been getting through it. I've been talking to my friends. I've been reaching out and asking for help when I need it, which I think is super important. I know that every day we are working through this like step-by-step process of understanding, okay, not every week gets to have a vote where we argue about which person's right and which person's wrong, and that's going to be okay. Sometimes there will be no vote weeks, and I just want you to know, if you're also struggling on a no vote week, I am here for you. Reach out to me. We can have a debate about, like, I don't know, what movie John and Arthur would have seen if they had seen a movie. Or, I'm happy to argue about anything. I will die on any hill. Any hill. So just like come to me, you can even come into poll chat, start a fun little like silly poll during a no vote week, and we'll talk it out and stuff like that. At me, ping me. I will argue about whatever. I'm just letting you know. I feel you. I'm here for you. We're almost through it. We have just like one more little stretch to go before we can engage in another debate. How have you been, Peppers?
I was imagining sad dog music in the background for that whole
I might have to layer
and
that under it.
yeah. Yeah. There you go. I've been great.
Yeah, I figured.
This has been just peachy for me. Funny enough, I mentioned this every episode. But when it comes to like actual genuine conflict, I chicken out and I flee. And so I treat poll chat very, very much the same. It's like everybody, like it's everybody's on the precipice of just killing each. And so I say my piece and I get out of there. So see that there's no poll chat. I'm like basking in the sun. I'm chilling in my little Mothman bucket hat. I'm doing great.
Living your best life, island vibes. Okay, so that brings me to the next portion of the episode. I'm sorry we went slightly into your time, guys. I will at you in the chat to let you know when we need to start wrapping it up. But I want everyone to welcome Fish and welcome back Lambda. They are going to be our kind of guest slash segment hosts for this week. We don't have a vote and we need to fill some time. So they also have some really interesting topics to talk about, and Peppers and I are going to take a back seat and kind of let them run autopsy for a little bit. So welcome, guys, and enjoy the deep dive from Fish and Lambda.
Hello. So I'm very thankful to Queen for basically giving me a platform, and I'm very thankful for Peppers for agreeing, and I'm very thankful for you to agree to let me just kind of talk at you for this portion. Um,
Oh, anytime, my
because
friend.
that might be what happens, and I apologize for it. I just have a lot of things to say. This is true regardless of whatever we discuss here, but especially about the topic today. So I want to talk about Mother Darkness because I have a lot of thoughts, and I don't know really if we don't really talk about theories a ton with you and me, Lambda. I don't think, but I'm curious to know like what you might also be thinking about in regards to her.
I may not always respond to your long theory posts. I almost always read them.
Oh, that's nice to know. I don't expect
Yeah,
anybody to personally. I just do it to get them out of my head.
absolutely. My thing is, I'm not super familiar with the extended, like, Lovecraft or Call of Cthulhu kind of lore. My knowledge
Hmm.
is mostly limited to the kinds of things that I have learned with working with the wiki. And so, like, the different kinds of entities we've been theorizing that Mother Darkness might be, like, some of them
Hmm.
have been mentioned in Malevolent exactly once, and some have not been mentioned at all.
Most haven't, in fact,
Most haven't.
which is awesome.
Yeah, and so it steps outside of the realm of knowledge that I have, but I do very much enjoy watching you, I guess,
Go
flop
crazy.
around in the water.
Yeah,
Um,
that's basically what happens. Yeah. So I don't know. It depends on who was here during the live drop of the chapter 225. But I was, in fact, helpfully. I don't know. Let's say I was helpfully nudged off of an
I,
assumption that I got very excited about by a certain somebody. We don't have to name names here. We don't
oh,
have
I'd
to
love
name
to
names
if
here.
you'd let me.
The evidence is in the channel if you would like to see for yourself exactly who maybe kind of intervened in my assumption making. If you guys know who he is Mr. Harlan Guthrie, if you're aware of that man.
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah, possibly, potentially. And I will take the L at this point, even though, and what I would like to explain are the reasons why I had this particular idea, and why this was in fact another hypnos moment. For those who know, I guess you know. My whole thing for a little while now has been theorizing that Mother Darkness is Lilith, who has been mentioned exactly once. Who we
Mhm.
know is the daughter of Cain, Mr. Nyarlathotep himself. And yes, I did want to pronounce that name out loud.
Very proud of you.
I
I will
thank
say
you.
Lilith is assumed to be Cain's daughter. That has not actually
Yes.
been confirmed in the text of the show.
Not in the text of the show, correct. That's also true. It's been an outside thing, but yes, you are correct there. And there were a lot of things that led me to believe that Mother Darkness was Lilith, and especially the things that our friend Malum said in this chapter about the association with particularly like taking children or, taking children and twisting them, the whole thing with Alexander and being an owl. The kind of association with like nighttime and darkness and witchcraft is another huge thing that really kind of got me, raising an eyebrow pretty much as soon as Mother Darkness was ever said out loud in episode 43. I have had some thoughts in my head about like, well, maybe she's not Lilith, but not very many, honestly, because I have thought that it was kind of in the bag, just because there were a lot of things that, really connected if you know a lot about Lovecraft mythology, or even if you just read my big long Lilith theory master post that's in the theory channel way back when. But yeah,
I think
I was
sorry, I was
yeah.
going to say one of the stronger points for me, at least, in the making a connection between Lilith and Mother Darkness was Lilith's connection to owls specifically.
Oh yes.
And that very suspicious owl that was essentially like served as a harbinger of Arthur's death.
Oh
Um,
yes.
and so
Oh
while I'm
yes.
pretty sure normal owls don't eat people, I'm concerned that owl might.
Yes. Seer of Time saying fish making connections, lining up dominoes, Harlan, and then it's a gif of dominoes falling over. And yeah, this is definitely on me. I just think I know too much about very strange niche topics. And one of them is real world folk tales and mythology about Lilith. One of the things that she is known for is, yeah, being associated with owls, particularly the screech owl. And we don't have any confirmation on what kind of owl Alexander is, but Arthur theorized it could be a great horned owl, but we're not sure. We're not really sure. But that was something that I was also really kind of focused in on, and how this whole thing might have made sense with, oh yeah, maybe Lilith is trailing after Arthur in the form of the owl to, I don't know, try and protect him or try and like intervene in some way, because one of my main ongoing theories is that Lilith will be helpful or at least instrumental in going against Cain finally,
Oh,
for
absolutely.
which is what I would love. I would love for her to be a bro. That's like my main thing. But there were, and Liz mentioned this. Liz is here, and Liz said, yeah, talking about how, mentioning the similarities between Lilith and whatever we heard about Mother Darkness. Liz said, but the hive mind and the need to consume living things and the not ever having been in prison did not add up to Lilith. And that is correct. We specifically hear Malum tell us that, she has been here on Earth for the whole time. She's not been locked away, and particularly that she's not confined to waiting around until the time that the stars are right, which is a big thing in Lovecraft mythos related to how most of the Great Old Ones are imprisoned somewhere and they can't be released until the time is right and the stars are right. So that's a big deal. And so those things were very kind of interesting. And so I was thinking to myself then, well, okay, now hold on. If it's not Lilith, then who else could it be? And there are multiple ideas. And one of them that I saw that I thought was really interesting and kind of we had a discussion about was actually talking about Shub Nagroth, and the idea that possibly somehow there was like a splinter of her left behind in some way, present in this timeline, despite the fact that she was erased. Because there are also a lot of similarities with her. There's the whole mother thing, the witchcraft. Another big part of Shub is witchcraft as well, and just how she's been intertwined with the story already in so many ways. It's despite, it existing without her. That could be a potentially really cool sort of reveal.
Yeah, especially since one of the only like confirmed abilities of Shubby that we've gotten in Malevolent
In
is
Malevolent.
her
Mhm.
ability to create Dark Young. Um
Yes.
and so
Dark
like
Young,
thematically
which,
I could see like
yeah.
how those things would match.
Oh yes, yes. And her need to consume living flesh in particular is something that you could, in fact, if you squint, sort of attribute to Shub, because of, most of her worship practices are about the flesh, procreation, that kind of thing. Maybe not a literal, cannibalistic eating people, but
The
in
schnasty
a way,
stuff.
the schnasty stuff, and of course, yes, birthing children and birthing the dark young. Like, her, an entire aspect of her is, she's the great mother, the black goat of 1,000 young. That's her whole deal. So that's an idea, perhaps. The shenasty stuff, the shenasty shub stuff. Yes, Bird. So that is one idea, and something that I kind of was thinking about. There are a couple of other candidates as I was kind of doing my own sort of re-listening and rereading certain things, trying to kind of look for a better culprit, basically. Like, I was investigating a mystery, which was pretty fun. And there's a lot of other entities out there, that could be potential. There's, of course, everybody knows the mother of pus, the lesser outer god, the mother of pus, that has a mother. That's a mother thing,
You
lesser
know,
outer god
just
composed of
based on
slime,
the name,
tentacles,
I,
eyes, and mouths. Yes.
I
Hmm.
think I'm good on that one. I'd
That's
just
it.
based
You don't
on
want to hear
name
more
alone,
about her? Yeah, the
in
mother of pus. Sure.
very
And
what
then
it
there
says on the tin.
is, yeah, very much so. And there's Idhaya, who is like known as the Star Mother, who is the twin or supposed twin or relation to Cthulhu. But her whole thing is that she consumes like stars and like planar beings. There's Great Father Dagon and Great Mother Hydra, who are the patron of all of the fishy folk in Lovecraft mythology.
Oh, so that's
And,
your preferred Eldritch
well,
being
yes,
choice.
yes, particularly, yes, I do enjoy a good Great Father Dagoth every now and then, but nothing that was really clicking for me entirely as I was kind of just looking through it. So I was thinking to myself, maybe this is just a completely new entity that Harlan has made up for Mother Darkness, and I am always really into that, because I always say my favorite part about Malevolent is not how it uses Lovecraftian lore exactly, but how it takes it and it interprets it and adds its own uniqueness to it. Its own kind of mythos that uses these beings in different ways. And I think that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. But I was doing some looking around, and then I came across one name that kind of made me perk up a little bit, and in particular because I was looking back at what Malum had said about the Mother Darkness, and the fact that she has many faces, and how he repeated that Mother Darkness is one of her faces, and her others were the Witch, there was the Shroud, the Dimming Light, and I was trying to search around and see if I could find places where those names were used, and I did come across what I believe is now my main theory for who Mother Darkness is, and that is a entity who is an outer god slash great old one. The names don't really matter that much, but it is a being named Yidra. One of
Somehow,
her,
sorry,
somehow one of,
somehow that is not either of the two ways I had imagined that name would be pronounced after watching you type that all week.
yeah, I haven't been
Way to come
talking
out of
about it
left
very
field.
often. Oh yeah, I haven't been talking about it very often in the Invictus server, but if you look her up, you probably won't find a ton. It's one of those entities that Call of Cthulhu really took, the RPG game, Chaosium, the company behind it, really took and sort of just kind of created an entire god for, based off of a couple of stories or a couple of mentions there and there. So the bulk of her lore is composed of within Call of Cthulhu sources. And the difference between the outer gods and the great old ones, to put it very lightly, the difference is whatever you want it to be. It can mean nothing, it can mean everything. Great old ones, if you want to go by the book, technically, to think of it in the most simplest of terms, it is like a hierarchy thing. The outer gods tend to be beings that are outside of the universe, not present within and on Earth, and, because they're too vast and powerful to really directly manifest here on Earth. And the great old ones are the guys underneath that. Most of them are present on Earth, but sealed away, or they're present in other places, but sealed away. So, like, that's the main difference.
I was gonna
But
say
also,
Scotty
mhm.
described it as great old ones function like a saint, outer gods more like an angel in terms of hierarchy.
Yes, that's exactly correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But also, it could mean nothing if you wanted it to. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that's one of the things in the Malleus Monstrorum, which is the Call of Cthulhu monster manual, basically, which is one of the sources that I continually go to, mostly because the art is really cool, but also just because it's easy. And looking through Yidra's sort of profile here and then sort of remembering things that I had already read before because I did a really big deep dive back into Lovecraft mythology a while ago. And one of her names is the Shroud, which is pretty interesting. But within the Malleus Monstrorum, she's described as operating in a way that I like to call akin to a biological Nyarlathotep. And if you don't know what the hell that means, it means that like Nyarlathotep, there's many masks and many avatars about, that one sort of main entity is creating, but is active through these different avatars that are all masquerading as different things at the same time. But the difference between that and Lilith also does this too, in the way that she in Malevolent, she was masquerading as Scratch, but she also appears to people in different ways via dreams, most commonly, to sort of like, charm them and get them to listen to her and all of that stuff. So that's one of the reasons why I was wondering if Mother Darkness was a Lilith alias. But the way that Yidra acts is purely biological, which means that Yidra is a physical, biological based being, not known from where she came, somewhere beyond the stars, most certainly. But the thing that Yidra primarily does is consume. And what she consumes is basically anything that she can. And through this act of consuming living things, she's then able to replicate them. And these are, animals. These can be humans. She has learned to mimic humans in a way that is similar to Nyarlathotep. But yes, she is this constantly all consuming mass, technically.
I think
And mhm.
Uh, just the description that you're giving is making me think in terms of how that might connect to like Mother Darkness, especially. I was sitting here thinking like if she is something that consumes whatever is available and creates a facsimile, I think is how
Mhm.
that word is pronounced,
Yeah.
of human life. It reminds me a lot of the witch using the maggots to
Yeah.
consume like the
Oh,
prince's
yeah.
body, or intentionally like trying to consume Arthur's body to turn them into what we would probably call a zombie, or
Yeah.
undead, like
Oh, yeah.
a imitation of human life.
Yes, exactly. And I was looking for so long about all of the various worms and great, awful, terrible worms and bug entities from mythos, of which there are so many of them. So many of them. But I wasn't really thinking about it in that kind of sense of, the act of consuming and then creating something in the way that the maggots do.
Yeah.
One of
Graham also
the.
pointed out that
Mhm.
the hag had also said that Mother Darkness had found her after she had been consumed by maggots in the river.
Yes, yeah, that. And the whole rebirthing thing. What Malum describes when he is discussing Mother Darkness is how she feels a pull towards the children. She seeks them and twists their minds and then creates disciples out of them, and bestows their gifts upon them, as well as there's these connection between her and these disciples, this kind of mental link. And that is also something that Yidra shares very prominently with how her cult sort of operates. the way that she does is, in order to sort of create new cultists, she basically just fully consumes them in her true form and then spits them back out. And what is left is basically a drone, to the point that they are linked into the hive mind of Hydra, and they are literally called her children at that point, because they're basically like fully reliant and, completely devoted to her. And there's a physical and there's like a mental link in it as well that corresponds to whichever avatar of Ydra that they are following. And that is something that was making me really worried about, if Mother Darkness is an avatar of Ydra, and we used perhaps some of her power in resurrecting Arthur from the dead. I'm very concerned over the possibility that maybe there could be some link between him and her that has been established. But even he also didn't, literally get absorbed in like by a big like protoplastic mass. If what I read here is correct, that the true form of Ydra is a revolting mass of protoplasm, which is pretty awesome. But that's something that has been kind of troubling me, of if this amulet was connected to Ydra, maybe Arthur is now somehow. And the other thing that is curious to me is, one of the things that Ydra can do is, animal life is not outside of her realm of what she can create and embody. So that is one of the reasons why I am side eyeing, sorry, Alexander. The real thing here is that I don't know why a being like Ydra, that is just like this all-consuming like hunger, wanting to draw things in, has aspirations even of eventually consuming like other gods, according to the lore in here, which might not account. But like, why would she be so interested in Arthur to be following him this whole time and not actively attempt to try and consume him already? So that's curious to me, if Ydra is the one behind Mother Darkness, and Mother Darkness is associated with the owl. If we're accepting all of those links together as true, which we technically can't confirm. But yeah, that's something that I'm curious about.
Yeah, my current running theory as to why she has not like immediately attempted to consume him, Arthur specifically, she really likes his starved swag.
Oh yeah, this is another like Eldritch Catnip moment.
Absolutely. She just looks at this skin and bones, skinny little English man, and it's just like, I kind of just want to see what he does.
Yeah,
Yeah, Peppers,
yeah.
he's too girly pop.
But that's also something why I'm worried about Arthur actually falling asleep, because half of me is wondering if the minute he hits the ground and falls asleep, then like the owl is going to turn into a mass of goo and just like latch itself onto him facehugger style and start trying to eat him. That's something that I could see happening reasonably, and I wanted to make everyone else aware of that. And yeah, Liz says owls don't eat people. If that is actually like a little hint, wink wink, if this line of theorizing is correct, then I will be so happy. I will be so happy about that, if that was a little unintentional, intentional, like, hey,
Oh, I
So
think it's a lot like season 4 it opened up. We were, when John was throwing his little fit about not going to the movies, like I'm just being treated like
oh
a
yeah.
passenger. We all laughed. And then later that season, Harlan was like, "Hey, do you remember when you laughed about these feelings John was having?"
Yeah. And then also Arthur saying how much he wanted to go back to England at the end of 38, 39, and the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
40. And then how that ended up in a way becoming true.
Yeah, I'm really
So,
concerned about how much we laughed at the owls don't eat people, boys.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. So that's something that we need to be aware of, I think. But keep in mind, this is just a theory. This is, and even the stuff that I've said here about Ydra might not even apply in Malevolence universe. So I'm not really wanting to sort of like read directly super hard into it and be like, oh, this is absolutely what it is. But
Yeah, you
like
don't want
that
another
is,
Hypnos moment.
well, this already is a Hypnos moment. That ship's gone. That ship's gone and sailed out into sea and crashed into the waves. which I'm fully happy about, honestly. I love it when I'm proven wrong because that usually means something even cooler is the correct option, which is why I
Yeah.
love theorizing so much about Malevolent and why I can't stop myself. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's something I just wanted to come up here and sort of introduce to everybody and basically tell us all that we need to be on fucking guard the minute that this owl begins to display protoplastic like qualities. If it begins to grow different mouths, if it begins to dissolve at any point, we need to be ready. But unfortunately, we don't have a fucking item that we could have had if we had just asked Malin for it.
But here's the thing, Fish. If we had gotten the item, I imagine it would have come with no context. We wouldn't have known what it was even for.
If it was a weapon, I'm pretty sure Arthur could figure out how to use a weapon if the owl
But he
started to
wouldn't
go all
know that
thing
something was
on
following
us.
him. Listen, Fish, there's an alternate dimension where we did get the item, and you are right now lamenting about the fact that we don't have lore.
That's probably true. That's 100% true. Does that mean that I'm still going to like accept this and be reasonable about it? No, probably not. I will never learn and I will never grow from my actions.
And I hope you never
And
do.
I hope that we never do. That's what Malevolent is all about. Never growing and staying the
Never
exact
changing.
same, never changing.
Yeah. These
And
are the lessons that we have brought to Autopsy this evening. But yeah, thank you everybody for listening to us tonight. I imagine,
Thank you.
Queen, if you've got a outro you were planning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. That was such a blast. I love learning about very gross things. It was super fun.
Yeah, there's so many more things I could talk about literally any time. Just call me up.
We
If
will
you're like, I don't want to do
definitely.
autopsy, I can just sit here and talk about this crazy shit that I forced myself to learn against my own will.
No, we will definitely have you back, Fish. You are such a gift and a treasure, and we're very
Thank
happy
you.
that you are willing to come and speak with us. And Lambda, it's always so nice to have you on.
Yes,
Oh,
it is. Thank you.
Peppers,
Hello.
sweet, sweet Peppers. How do we feel
I-
about what we have just learned?
Fucking hate that. Super awesome. Yippee. Especially the idea that Arthur, once again, is in danger if he goes the fuck to sleep. Really love that. It's like my favorite thing ever. Yeah, good to know.
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of terrifying possibilities for Arthur in the future. I'm also concerned that, like, you know, Malin went and directly quoted the fact that, you know, she is and always has been, and all of that really creepy, like, I don't know, mysticism type language. Just there's a vibe. Anyway, I think we are going to go ahead and wrap up. But thank you guys again so much, Fish and Lambda. I so appreciate you coming on to help out. Peppers, are we doing this again next week? Do you like me enough to do autopsy again?
Well, not really. I'll have to think about it all
Depends on the
day.
chapter.
Yeah,
If you won't,
that's-
I will. So
Yeah, of course, unless I'm dead. It would be really hilarious, honestly. Please, like, consistently clip that if I do somehow manage to die within the week. I find that hilarious. So you have my full permission to like stomp body and yeah, so excited to come to not tomorrow. No, let's not do that. Next week.
Next week. Okay, so here's how we're gonna do this. This is gonna be our first group outro. Peppers and I are gonna say the horrors persist, and Fish and Lambda, I want you to respond, but so do we. Can you do that?
Oh, okay.
All right.
I can
All right,
try.
I'll do my very best.
We're gonna. I mean, it's long distance audio. We'll see if we sync up, but we'll give it our best shot. All right. Thank you everybody for joining. We will see you next week. The horrors persist.
But so
But
do
so
we.
do we.
Flawless, no notes, perfect. Thank you guys. Good night,
That was almost
everybody.
synced. Good work, everybody. Good work, soldiers.
First try.